The first and probably the most famous of our Venus figurines is the Venus of Willendorf. And in this case, we're looking at something quite small, quite tiny. She's only about 4¼ inches tall, which makes sense. This is a nomadic society. They have to carry everything they create. So they're not going to create a life-size statue. They're going to create something quite small, quite easily carried from place to place. I mean, imagine if you had to pack up everything you own and physically pull it on a sled or put it on your back and carry it for, say, 10 miles, 20 miles, and then do that on a regular basis. She was discovered in Willendorf, Austria, and basically found in someone's garden. The wonders of living in Europe. So she gets her name. And she's carved in the round, meaning that she is carved all the way around the figure. You can spin her, the whole figure is carved out. She's carved out of limestone, which is a very soft, easily carved material. If you've ever picked up a piece of limestone, you can almost carve it with your thumbnail. It wouldn't take anything other than a slightly harder piece of stone, or in this case, maybe an old arrowhead or scraping tool to create this piece, and possibly done in fairly short time. She's also painted in red ochre. Now, red ochre is basically rust, and what they would do is they would mix it with water. Some areas we believe they actually may have chewed on pieces of it, and it creates a paint that then can be applied to the surface. Red ochre, yellow ochre, white and black are quite common colors that we will see. Yellow ochre is basically a sulfur added to the material. And then what we have is white is chalk or limestone, black is charcoal. Now when we look at her, you'll notice that the hair, the face, looks really odd. It looks like a beanie cap. In fact, it's not. What they've done is they've stylized the hair. And when you think about what parts of the body are the hardest to carve, the face would be one of them. And so they simply don't do it. They simply avoid it. No different than, at some point in grade school, you were asked to draw people, and you probably avoided things like the face for just this reason. Because it's very difficult to do. The person carving this probably doesn't have an enormous amount of time. They can't put 40 hours into it. They may only have 10 or 5. So they're going to focus on the larger portions, the larger tracks, the larger areas, and avoid things like the face. Same, by the way, applies to the hands. They're simply incised. They're sort of etched in above the breasts, sitting there, and the hands and feet are going to be particularly difficult. The hands are very simple. The feet are missing. They would have been pointed, but we're not sure exactly what they would have looked like. She is probably a fertility symbol, and we've reached sex as a theme in art already. It only took the 5th piece. So there are 2 kinds of fertility that they may have been looking at the time. We have crop fertility or herd fertility, and we have human fertility. Crop and herd fertility would be really important. So she may be carved for that. So they're associating, if human fertility, creating more humans is important, well, they want the animals in the herd to be reproductively successful as well, because at the end of the day, they want to eat those animals. They want their crops, such as they are, they're hunter-gatherers, but what they're doing is they're taking plants and they're spreading seeds in the area that they find them to try and encourage a little more growth. So it's not farming as such, but again, that's fertility. Most scholars, however, believe it's probably related to human fertility, and the thing is, human fertility was a huge mystery to them, but even as recently as 200 years ago. Yes, people knew that, when a boy and a girl get together and do certain things, then sometimes you get children. And they got that. Basic sex ed 101. The thing is, human fertility is really complicated in that it's hard to predict. Imagine being ancient humans. It's hard to predict when you're going to get pregnant. Why is it that you get pregnant at certain times and not others? Why is it that certain people get pregnant and others don't? They aren't aware of all of the complications that go into that. They aren't aware of infertility problems. They aren't aware of all of these sorts of things. So it would be a massive mystery. And so they're going to create something that is going to help them, like a talisman, which may be what she is. There is one other interesting theory, that this is actually a self-portrait of a pregnant woman. Now, an art historian took these pictures of themselves while they were pregnant to compare to the statue, and you see the comparison is actually pretty good. And it would explain some of the proportions that we see, because if you're looking down your body, then you're going to see this idea of particularly large belly, large breasts, because of forced perspective. The things closer to you are going to seem much bigger. And this theory actually makes a lot of sense, because at the end of the day, who better to carve a piece that is going to have some kind of magical power or spiritual power that is going to help people find fertility than a person who is fertile, a person who has given birth to a child. And so that may be what we're seeing here. Again, we see enhanced sexual characteristics, something that we tend to do even today on Insta-Snapchat-a-book, where we upload our photo and then we alter it to make ourselves look more attractive. We've done this in magazines before the internet. We've done this in paintings before that. And there are always certain characteristics that you enhance in men or in women. And what we're seeing here is an enhancement, again, of those sexual characteristics. We're increasing body fat because they know that that's necessary to maintain the pregnancy, and we're enhancing breasts, in this case, due to motherhood. The depiction of breasts throughout much of the art that we look at through this class will not be related to sexuality. It will be related much more closely to fertility and the issue of bringing a child to, through their early childhood years, through that weaning. A mother needs to be able to feed her child, and so that becomes a major theme. That's why we see topless women depicted so often in ancient art. It's not a sexual element. After all, toplessness was actually quite common in the world until about the 17th century. So as we look at her, what we see is a figure that is really depicting visually the ideas of fertility, taking an abstract concept like fertility and trying to put it in very concrete terms, something that is very different from anything that we have seen before. And it makes her particularly important, the sort of thing that I ask about on an exam.